Welcome back to the Quarterly Call. All content is for informational purposes and is not investment advice. Please consult with an investment professional. So today we are looking at what is, truly a seismic event in the media world. We've been going through the source materials, recent company conference presentation with the co-CEOs of a major media player, and they basically lay out their entire strategic playbook for the future.
And it's a fascinating one.
It really is. This is the company that built its entire global empire on, disrupting media through this incredible simplicity. And now they're betting everything on embracing, profound complexity.
That's really the core tension here, isn't it? And that's what we need to unravel for you. The mission of this analysis is to really get under the hood and decode the strategic logic and, the daunting execution plan behind this massive proposed acquisition of Warner Bros. Discovery WBD. Because this is so much more than just buying a content library. It forces them to integrate business models they frankly fought against for a decade. Things like traditional theatrical distribution, large-scale TV content licensing to other companies.
Yeah, to their competitors even.
Exactly. So we need to understand not just the what and the how, but the really intense competitive why behind this enormous shift.
So let's just start there with that paradox. For so long, their superpower was having that one single product, one SEQ, one global streaming model. It let them move so fast, capture all that market share.
It was their whole identity.
Totally. And now, in a move they themselves are calling unexpected, they are choosing to inherit all this complexity. Physical assets, traditional release windows, all these different revenue streams. And they're doing it to chase what they call bigger prizes.
It's basically an admission, isn't it? It's them saying that the first phase, that simple, explosive growth phase of streaming, it's over, fundamentally over.
For everyone.
For everyone. It signals a real maturation of the entire media ecosystem. That era of just gaining subscribers and having that number go up and to the right, that's plateaued for everybody. So to unlock those next multi-billion-dollar returns, you can't just disrupt the content model anymore.
You have to become the model.
You have to become the dominant force in everything, both content production and distribution, and that now includes all the traditional pipelines. Scale is the only game left in town.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics of the deal. The first thing that just jumps out from the presentation was the sheer intensity of their confidence. The co-CEOs expressed super confidence in this deal getting done. And this is despite facing some very real competition. There's an alternative bid on the table, that potential merger of Paramount and Skydance. But they seem, almost dismissive of it.
I think dismissive is the right word. They framed that other bid as entirely expected. They're basically portraying it as market noise, not a genuine threat to their plan, just the sort of thing that happens in a big competitive transaction. It's all part of the game.
It's all part of the game. And their messaging around it was, I thought, expertly tailored. They had a different message for each stakeholder. For shareholders, it's all about value capture. For consumers, hey, you're going to get more content.
Right.
But, and this is critical, they are leaning so heavily on the political argument that this deal is designed to create and protect jobs in the U.S. entertainment sector. And that focus is absolutely crucial for what's coming down the pike.
The regulatory hurdles.
The regulatory hurdles. We'll definitely get into that.
That focus on jobs, it's definitely a deliberate political strategy. But if we look past the rhetoric for a second, the actual execution plan, the way they're going to create value, is broken down into three really distinct phases. And this is where you can see the structured financial discipline they're trying to apply to this massive valuation. Yeah, and that three-phase structure is essential. You have to look at it that way because it lets them isolate the low-risk, high-certainty value from the long-term high potential. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't upside. It gives investors a clear roadmap.
Okay, so let's start with phase one, pre-close execution. They label this one low risk. What does that actually entail?
It's basically the holding pattern. That's the easiest way to think about it. A merger of this size, it takes a long time to get approved. So phase one just requires both companies, the acquirer and WBD, to keep doing what they're already doing.
Just keep the lights on and keep growing.
Exactly. Execute on your existing independent organic growth plans until the deal is officially closed. And they said it very plainly. They said this is low risk because, quote, we know how to go do that. It minimizes any disruption during that long regulatory review period. You don't want to sacrifice your current momentum.
Makes sense. Okay, then we get to phase two. This is the big one. immediate integration, and unlocked value. And according to their presentation, this is really the engine room of the whole deal. This is the value that was actually priced into their model.
And the part they call highly executable.
Highly executable, right,
Yeah.
which makes it the most critical phase for, immediate financial success.
Absolutely. This phase really boils down to two core financial levers, and both of them rely on the acquiring company's existing scale and their technological mastery.
So what's the first lever?
The first one is unlocking library value. I mean, WBD has a gargantuan catalog of existing, incredibly valuable IP.
Decades of it.
Decades. And the acquiring company's argument is that because of their incredible reach, and by that they mean their global penetration, their subscriber density, and their, sophisticated experience in maximizing content, they can find value in WBD's existing titles that WBD on its own just couldn't.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit, because just saying they're better at licensing feels a bit vague. I mean, how specifically do they plan to maximize that library value in a way that WBD couldn't before?
It really comes down to two things: data optimization and a global windowing strategy. So the acquiring company, they operate their own platform in hundreds of countries. They have unparalleled data on what you watch, when you watch it, what makes you stop watching.
Right, content fatigue, all of that.
All of it. They are masters of A/B testing everything. The thumbnail art, the placement in the algorithm, managing these super complex international licensing windows. Now, WBD, coming from that legacy studio system, they often sold big, clunky territory deals.
Like, here's the rights for all of Latin America for 5 years.
Precisely. The new plan is to, over time, take those assets back in-house and run them through their global optimization machine. They can dynamically license a title in a country where it makes sense, but reserve it for their own platform where it drives the most new subscriptions. That level of, operational fine-tuning, it dramatically increases the net present value of the entire WBD catalog.
So they're basically buying a company and immediately saying, your historical model is inefficient and our data is going to make more money off your exact same assets. I mean, that's a pretty high-stakes integration plan.
It is, but they see it as a core competency. It's what they do. And that leads to the second core value driver in phase 2, which is the refocusing of HBO.
Ah, yes, HBO.
I mean, it's a global brand. It's synonymous with prestige TV. And the plan is to strategically deploy that brand as a premium differentiator within their, increasingly diverse portfolio of offerings.
They've already sort of tested these waters, haven't they? When they launched the advertising tier, that was adding a layer of complexity. Is this a similar idea, just using HBO as a tool for pricing and tiering?
That is exactly it. HBO gives them this crystal clear high-end anchor for their whole service. They've already proven they can handle the complexity of different tiers, standard, premium, ad-supported, even mobile-only in some markets.
Right.
Integrating HBO allows them to create even more diverse and more profitable plans for you. For instance, you could easily see them structuring a new ultra-premium tier that bundles, say, high bitrate 4K access to the entire HBO library along with their normal content. They see this as a highly executable task because they just did it with the ad tier.
Okay, that makes sense. So that leaves the final phase, phase 3, long-term IP and upside. This is really exciting stuff, right? All the amazing IP that WBD owns. But here's the crucial note for credibility, I think. The co-CEOs explicitly said the value of all this was not included in their initial valuation model.
And that is such a sophisticated way of signaling discipline to the market by saying they were appropriately conservative and that they didn't factor in the eventual value of, say, a new Harry Potter series or the next slate of DC films.
This could be worth billions.
Could be worth billions. But because those long-term creative timelines introduce uncertainty, they left it out. They are telling Wall Street that the price they paid is justified solely by the near-term, high-certainty operational stuff in phase 2.
So phase 3 is just gravy.
It's pure unpriced upside. It protects their whole valuation thesis against any future development risks or, a creative miss.
So if you put it all together, this whole rationale, it's not just a content play, it's a thesis. They're saying that the WBD assets are structurally undervalued because they're stuck in an outdated system.
Yes. Their core belief is that WBD's assets work significantly better when you feed them into their business model. And conversely, their highly scalable, data-driven business model works far, far better when it's fueled by the iconic content depth that WBD brings.
Which brings us to this required pivot. I mean, the deliberate abandonment of their founding principle of simplicity. It's the biggest philosophical shift we've seen from them in years. We mentioned that superpower of having one ski.
Hmm.
That's what let them focus entirely on tech and just expand globally at a crazy speed.
And that foundation, that sheer operational maturity they built from scaling a one-product company across the globe, that is what they claim now enables them to introduce these new complexities.
It's like they're saying, we built the bedrock, now we can build the cathedral.
That's a great way to put it. They point to the successful launches of live sports and the advertising tier as their proof points. They're essentially saying, we mastered the incredibly difficult base model, so now we are uniquely positioned to add in traditional complexity to go after these exponentially bigger prizes.
And the execution strategy for that seems to emphasize these three additive businesses where they have, and this is key, no redundancy.
Yes.
This is the core reason they can claim they don't need significant job cuts in these new areas. They are buying capabilities they just don't have.
And that is such a critical point, both for the actual integration and for the political optics. They are not buying a rival streaming service to, fire half the engineers and consolidate the back end. They are buying fully functional divisions that fill genuine holes in their own operations.
So what's the first one?
The first additive business is the theatrical motion picture studio. And this is the pivot that required the most explanation from them, given, the years of animosity between streaming and the theater business.
Right.
And the commitment they're making is deep. They say they will keep this unit operating largely as they are.
Wait a second. The global leader in streaming, the company that basically popularized the 45-day window and collapsing the theatrical model, is now promising to maintain the traditional release schedule. They're not just keeping the studio, they're actively defending its old distribution model.
They've seen the light, maybe. They recognize the value chain now. They acknowledge that a big theatrical release, it builds a cultural moment, it drives higher production values, and it creates all this downstream value for when the movie eventually hits their streaming service.
It's a giant promotional engine.
It's a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign that someone else pays for. And they specifically cited WBD's 2025 movie slate, titles like Minecraft, Superman, Weapons, and Sinners, and they confirmed these movies would continue to get full theatrical releases, exactly as WBD had planned. The streaming king is now the defender of the cinema experience.
Wild. Okay, what's the second additive business?
The second is the television studio. This is the part of the business that focuses on licensing content to third-party networks and platforms all over the world. They described it as a healthy business that, they were just never in.
So it's pure revenue diversification.
100%. For years, this company was a net buyer of content. Now, overnight, they become a massive seller of content to their direct competitors. The plan is to keep this licensing arm running pretty autonomously under its existing leadership. It introduces a revenue source that's completely disconnected from the core subscription model, which helps balance the risk of, being so dependent on subscriber growth.
And the third major integration point, which we touched on earlier, is that structural HBO refocus.
Right, and the mandate here is all about clarity. The co-CEO said that HBO should stop doing the gymnastics to make themselves into a general entertainment brand.
Which is what WBD was pushing them to do for HBO Max.
Exactly. WBD was pushing HBO to be broader, to appeal to more people, to fuel that streaming growth. But the new owner is already the general entertainment brand globally, so that frees HBO to just specialize. The mandate is simple. Double down on the things that people have loved for 50 years. Prestige TV, high-quality, high-budget movies. It takes all the pressure off of HBO to be all things to all people.
So this all rolls up into one just astonishing figure. The combined company will have approximately $30 billion in annual content spend. 3-0. That makes them the biggest spender in entertainment content in the world.
By a lot.
By a substantial margin.
It is a staggering amount of capital, and the strategy they're building around it is so critical. They are explicitly and very publicly contrasting their approach with their competitors, while other companies are, looking for synergy by cutting content spend and doing massive layoffs.
They're going the other way.
They're doing the exact opposite. They are not seeking synergy through reduction. Their entire goal is to grow revenue higher than that $30 billion expense, which, if they can do it, allows them to continually expand their profit margin while also growing the content budget every single year.
That margin expansion goal, though, that is incredibly ambitious, especially given the history of the media industry. Growing a content budget of $30 billion a year while making sure your revenue grows even faster, that is a monumental operational challenge.
Oh, it is.
It requires near-perfect execution across all three of these new complex business models you just laid out.
It does. It fundamentally shifts the entire risk profile of the company.
Yeah.
They are betting that their revenue growth from their optimized licensing, their expanding ad business, and the global appeal of all this combined IP will more than offset the sheer cost of maintaining this level of production. Not to mention the complexity of managing theatrical releases and global licensing deals. But, if they can pull this off, they effectively create this self-sustaining content engine that just constantly increases its market share around the world.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the environment this deal has to survive in. The regulatory case is just paramount, right? How did the co-CEOs actually structure their argument to get ahead of the inevitable antitrust concerns?
They were very careful. They started by saying, it's not their job to define the market for regulators, but they remain very confident that the deal will be approved. Their whole strategy relies on framing this transaction not as a harmful consolidation,
But as a stabilizing
a
force.
stabilizing force for the American content industry. This is their pro-constituency argument in action.
Right.
They argue that the deal is a win for everyone on the political spectrum. It's pro-consumer because you get more value. It's pro-creator because it increases the total content spend in the system. It's pro-worker because it protects and drives jobs. And ultimately, it's pro-growth and pro-innovation.
So it's a message designed to appeal to both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely. Emphasizing economic benefits, not market concentration.
But they can't just rely on messaging. What about the hard data they use to counter the monopoly concerns? They leaned heavily on the Nielsen view hours data.
Yes, using U.S. TV view hours as the key metric. And this seems like a very deliberately chosen metric.
Why that one specifically?
Because it's a strong defensive metric, it captures the totality of how you, the consumer, spend your attention. It includes YouTube, it includes broadcast TV, it shows just how crowded the media landscape really is. And on a standalone basis, the acquiring company is actually ranked 6th in U.S. TV view hours.
6th.
Yeah, they lag significantly behind huge platforms like YouTube, Disney, the broadcast networks. They only hold about 8% of total view hours.
That 8% figure is surprisingly low.
Yeah.
And the number after the acquisition is even more telling, isn't it? If you integrate all of HBO Max viewing, it only boosts their combined share from 8% to just 9%.
9%. And that is a very difficult number for any regulator to look at and define as a monopoly or an excessively dominant position. They were very strategic. They used competitive data to strengthen their case even more. They pointed out that the combined company would still be far behind YouTube, which commands 13%.
Ah, so they're benchmarking against the biggest fish.
The biggest fish. And they even noted that a hypothetical combination of Paramount and WBD would have been around 14% of view hours. So this data, it provides a really strong quantifiable case against antitrust action based on consumer attention share.
But hold on. The metric of view hours, it doesn't necessarily address the other big concern, which is about content supply or their pricing power over talent, right? If they control $30 billion in annual spending, aren't they basically consolidating the demand side for creators and producers? That's a key question regulators usually ask.
And that is the latent tension in their argument. You're right. While the companies focus on you, the consumer, regulators are often just as concerned with the market for labor and talent. The co-CEOs, they preempted this challenge. They shifted the focus entirely to job creation and stability.
This is where they brought up the president.
Right. They talked about having multiple discussions with the U.S. president, and they stated that the president's primary concern is protecting and creating American jobs.
And that sets the stage perfectly for their investment narrative. They started linking the merger to these tangible domestic economic contributions, citing things like employing 140,000 people from 2020 to 2024 through their productions, a $125 billion economic contribution.
And they highlighted huge infrastructure investments. The $1 billion studio they're building in New Jersey, revitalizing the old Fort Monmouth military base. They really stress that this is driving local economic renewal. They also mention the fully running studio and job training center they have in New Mexico.
These are very clear, very visible investments, things a politician can point to.
Exactly. They resonate with political leaders who are interested in tangible American job growth. And this whole political framing allowed them to draw a very, very sharp contrast contrast with their rival bid. The co-CEO explicitly contrasted their approach of investment and making jobs with the reported $6 billion of synergies from the rival Paramount bid.
Which they then directly equated to.
Cutting jobs. They're basically weaponizing the word synergy. They're arguing that in the current political climate, consolidation that leads to cuts is a bad look, while their proposal, which focuses on adding businesses and increasing spend, is pro-worker. It's a powerful, maybe a bit politically charged, but powerful way to frame the debate.
Okay, so it's crucial to remember that this huge merger is happening while their core business is still pushing ahead with these really ambitious organic growth plans.
Yeah, the merger is meant to be an accelerant, not a replacement.
Right. So let's talk about those. Let's start with the velocity of their advertising business.
The ad unit is it's undergoing explosive growth. They're forecasting that their ad revenue will more than double this year alone. And that acceleration, it's powered by their scale, their improved tech, and of course, having premium content that brings in the high-value advertisers.
And the key to that velocity, as they tell it, is being on their own proprietary ad stack. They say their ability to iterate and launch new features incredibly quickly is all because they own the technology from end to end.
Owning the stack is everything. It gives them total control over the entire transaction, from, data ingestion to the ad delivery and the measurement. And that lets them move so much faster than their competitors who are all relying on third-party tech. And this technological control, it's what fuels their really sophisticated roadmap for the next few years.
So what does that roadmap look like? They talked about 2026 and 2027 specifically, adding demand sources, advanced targeting.
So for 2026, the focus is really on expansion and refinement. They're adding more demand sources. They cited Amazon's DSP and AJA in Japan as examples, which just increases the pool of buyers competing for their inventory. They're also improving the basics, like targeting and measurement, and introducing new higher value formats like interactive ads.
The kind of ads that command a premium price point.
Exactly. But then for 2027, the vision moves into what they called the really fun space of non-deterministic targeting model-based approaches.
Hey, that sounds incredibly dense. Can we unpack that for a second? What does non-deterministic targeting actually mean in practical terms for the consumer and for the advertiser?
In essence, a lot of traditional digital targeting relies on deterministic data like explicit cookies or user IDs that say, this is this exact person.
Right.
Non-deterministic approaches use massive proprietary data sets like your viewing history, what time of day you watch, the types of content you engage with, to build predictive models about the likelihood of you being interested in a certain product. It means they can deliver a highly relevant ad without necessarily needing to know every single piece of your explicit personal data.
So for the advertiser, it's a better return on their investment.
Better ROI. And for you, the consumer, it means you hopefully get more relevant, less intrusive ads. This is really the future of digital media advertising, and because they own their own stack, they can develop these incredibly complex models internally at a massive scale.
And the WBD deal just pours gasoline on this fire.
It's a direct feed. The high engagement that comes from WBD's iconic titles, whether it's Harry Potter or a prestige HBO show, it makes that ad inventory inherently more desirable. It lets them charge higher CPMs.
It creates a feedback loop.
A perfect feedback loop. Premium content drives engagement, which improves the accuracy of their targeting models, which attracts higher spending advertisers, which then gives them the money to spend $30 billion on more premium content.
Okay, let's move to another high-growth area. Global live event expansion. They mentioned some recent successes like the Jake Paul fight, NFL football on Christmas. What's the next frontier for them here?
The real strategic shift is coming in 2026, and that's rolling out local live programming outside of the U.S. Because live content is, inherently tied to a time zone. If a big game happens at 8 p.m. in New York, it's pretty much missed by key international markets.
Because everyone's asleep.
Exactly. So to truly monetize live content globally, to connect it to that ad flywheel we were just talking about, they need local content that respects local time zones and, just as importantly, local cultural interests.
That makes perfect sense.
They cited the success of the Canelo-Crawford fight in Mexico as their proof of concept. You just can't get that level of localized success by simulcasting a global event at a terrible hour. So the new strategy is to invest in major local events. They mentioned things like the World Baseball Classic in Japan or specific Women's World Cup events. This lets them capture huge local ad dollars and all that engagement, which just drives that critical flywheel effect.
Finally, let's talk about scaling video games. They claim they've spent years building the necessary plumbing and infrastructure, and now they're finally ready to unlock the strategic value. They broke their gaming strategy down into four pretty distinct categories.
Yeah, they have four very clear avenues to monetize their IP in the gaming space.
That's the first one.
First is immersive narrative games on IP. Think high-quality, story-driven games that are directly tied to their biggest original shows. So allowing fans of, say, Squid Games to go super deeper into that universe, this is all about high fan engagement and retention.
Okay, and the second.
The second is a specific focus on kids' games. This is a very clear attempt to lock in the next generation of users. They're offering a safe, walled garden experience that's defined by no in-app payments, no ads, which addresses a lot of common parental concerns while building that early brand loyalty.
Smart. What's number three?
Third is using their huge mobile distribution platform for popular story game IP. They're acting as a distribution channel, basically. They highlighted the success they've had with titles like Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption on their mobile platform, which are topping the charts.
The fourth category, this one seems the most innovative in how it uses their existing tech, the social and party games.
Yeah, this one is designed to reinvent the family game night. It features recognizable games like Boggle or Pictionary or Lego games, and you play them directly on your TV using your phone as the controller.
That's a perfect integration of their technology and their content platform.
It is, and they're already blending this interactive model into the linear viewing experience. They mentioned a new interactive quiz show called Best Guess. And this, of course, is where the WBD deal offers just immediate, massive upside. Even though gaming wasn't in the valuation model, the ability to suddenly incorporate properties like Hogwarts and get access to WBD's talented gaming studios, it's a huge, unpriced boost.
So to really understand the foundation of consumer interest that supports all these huge strategic moves, we should probably touch on the content slate they highlighted. It really shows their ongoing creative momentum.
Yeah, the recent and upcoming slate, it provides a lot of necessary texture. I mean, Q4 of 2025 was just dominated by these huge cultural moments. You had two more drops of Stranger Things, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which is already getting Globe nominations.
House of Dynamite, the new season of Emily in Paris.
Right. And they also specifically called out the new Knives Out movie, Wake Up Dead Man, as a title where they experimented with different theatrical models.
And the outlook for 2026, it looks like it's maintaining that momentum. You've got these huge high-profile projects, Narnia from Greta Gerwig, Apex with Charlize Theron, The Rip with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon.
Plus the returning flagships, new seasons of Bridgerton, One Piece, Beef. This list, it really underscores why they need that $30 billion spend. You have to have that to maintain global dominance.
And crucially, this success isn't just limited to English language content. They talked a lot about the momentum of non-English titles. Even beyond behemoths like Squid Games, they illustrated what they called the Netflix effect in local markets.
The ability to actually drive cultural change.
Tell us a bit more about that cultural impact, because that goes way beyond just viewing numbers, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. They used some specific examples from their Korean content. They actually credited their show Culinary Class Wars with fundamentally creating the notion of the celebrity chef in South Korea. It sparked new investment and public interest in the whole restaurant industry there. And then there's Physical 100.
So where do they see AI actually delivering value in the short to medium term? They laid out three distinct areas.
The first is the member space. This is all about enhancing your user experience. So better personalization, higher quality personalization for new content types like games or live events, and creating entirely new consumer experiences. Things like conversational search or a conversational recommendation UI, just to make finding something to watch more natural.
Okay, what's the second?
The second is the ad space, which we touched on. AI can streamline that previously cumbersome process of, modifying ad creative on the fly. It can quickly tailor a brand's creative to fit seamlessly into the universe of a specific show, which is a massive improvement for brand safety and relevance.
And the third area, the most sensitive one, is the creative side.
Right. And here, the intention is that AI will help creators tell better stories. They see it being integrated into the production pipeline in the same way that, say, computer-generated VFX was years ago.
But how does a technology that's designed for optimization actually help a creator tell a better story instead of just a cheaper one? That's the core skepticism you hear from the creative community.
It's about shifting the focus from efficiency of labor to efficiency of process. So imagine an AI handling all the logistical, resource-intensive, or iterative tasks in pre-production. optimizing complex VFX pipelines, generating localized rough cuts for editing, rapidly testing different narrative structures to find plot holes.
So it automates the grunt work.
It automates the high-cost, high-iteration operational work. So the human creative talent, the director, the writer, the showrunner, they're freed up to focus entirely on the core storytelling, the character development, the unique vision, without being burdened by all those repetitive technical constraints. That's the promise of how it can be better first.
And the co-CEOs, they were vehement about this. The technology must be better first. They believe if it only results in content that's faster and cheaper, it will alienate audiences and
Yeah.
be bad for everybody. It would just flood the market with low-quality derivative stuff.
And this feeds directly into their competition argument. They challenge the idea that AI is a big strength for short-form video platforms. They argue that mass-produced, lower-effort content, which is often what AI is good at, results in less audience attachment, less passion. They believe that telling stories incredibly well consistently will remain a very scarce commodity that requires huge human investment and really strong IP.
Which leads to the crucial point of IP protection.
Exactly. They stress the necessity of applying AI in a way that feeds fandom versus running the risk of destroying it. It's all about reinforcing the value of their unique content against what they call the commodity layer of Content C. That valuable AP is what justifies the $30 billion budget and the massive WBD acquisition in the first place.
So ultimately, every single one of these strategies, the WBD deal, the gaming expansion, the ad business, the AI approach, it all has to feed back into that core engine.
Deliver value, get paid, grow profit. It's that simple, on paper.
And they made it clear that their content investment is going up, regardless of the merger. Standalone, they were already planning to grow their 2026 content spend of $18 billion. Now, combined with WBD, they're going to grow the resulting $30 billion spend.
And the financial model is, like you said, simple in concept, but incredibly difficult in execution. It's built to grow revenue higher than their content expense, which is the only way they can continually expand their profit margin, no matter the market conditions.
And that requires perfect execution across all those new complex models. Theatrical, licensing, everything has to work to make sure every dollar they spend on content returns more than a dollar in revenue.
Yeah. Their concluding message to shareholders was one of just unified confidence. They positioned the merger as a win, not just for investors, but for consumers, for creators, and for the whole industry, by creating and protecting all those production jobs.
And their final declaration was this bold statement on their own operational capacity. They actually claimed that this merger, despite its scale and complexity, is not as complicated as many of the things we've already done.
Which, when you consider that they built a global streaming architecture from nothing, is a very powerful signal. They believe they have the maturity and the tech stack needed to absorb WBD without major operational failures. They're betting their capacity for innovation outweighs the integration risk.
What really stands out to me is just the sheer scale of the change required here. This is a company that went from being the ultimate disruptor, the one championing simplicity and collapsing content windows,
Becoming the ultimate consolidator.
exactly, to becoming the consolidator, embracing theatrical distribution and traditional licensing, the very things they spent a decade fighting against. The fact that they had to grow from a disruptive force into this massive, diversified, $30 billion powerhouse, it just shows how rapidly this industry has consolidated.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the success of this whole monumental deal really hinges on their ability to manage contradiction. Can they maintain the premium, differentiated identity of HBO and the cultural integrity of the WBD theatrical slate, while at the same time integrating them into this high-velocity, globally standardized, ad-supported streaming machine?
That's the billion-dollar question, or $30 billion
It
question.
is. And the ultimate question for the whole industry is this. When one single entity commands $30 billion a year in content spending, and it controls both the high-art prestige studio like HBO and the technology that dictates what billions of people watch, does that pursuit of scale inevitably lead to some unparalleled new media hegemony? Or will the internal contradictions of all that complexity ultimately slow their momentum and allow that commodity layer of Content C to rise up and erode what makes them different?
A truly complex thought for a newly complex media world. Thank you so much for tuning into the Quarterly Call. For more episodes, please remember to rate and follow our show. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.